Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We already got a couple of you in here, so good to see all of you again. I know that we will get a bunch more as the show goes on. We have a great show in store for you guys tonight. It is our fourth part of our four-part series here on the over-unders going all the way through the SEC. We got the Aggies on deck tonight. We got Ole Miss. We have Mizzou, and we got Mississippi State. So it'll be fun to talk about those guys, give our gut reactions to what is going on for those teams potentially going forward here in 2025. And we also have a little bit of a different segment tonight to start us off with. We're going to have a rapid fire segment. There's a lot been going on, just a couple of news nuggets, but nothing with a lot of meat or teeth in it that we really need to discuss for more than 20 minutes. So we're going to go through a couple rapid fire news stories here for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get into the bulk of our show, which will be the over-unders. But before we get to that, as always, please go sign up for the Biscuits SEC newsletter, the Morning Biscuits newsletter, written by myself and Hammer. Hammer had it this morning and put out a great newsletter, free to sign up. So please check that out. I write it on I write it. I'll be writing it next week. Hammer writes it. We switch off weeks during the off season, 1 day a week on Wednesdays. During the off season, and then during the season we'll go to a Monday and Friday schedule since there's just so much going on during the football season that needs to be covered. So all the goings on around the SEC, everything you need to know, and keep you updated for your water cooler talk while you're at the office. You can check that out in the Biscuits and SEC newsletter, Morning Biscuits newsletter. Go check that out. So Hammer, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. Excited for the end of our over-under journey, I guess, as we barrel our way toward the season and actually start talking some real football. I know we've got SEC Media Days next week that'll give us plenty to chat about. But, after that, we can really start kind of diving into some real previews as these over-unders have kind of just been gut reactions. But super fun to be talking about football again after, a long offseason filled with off the field litigation and the sport as a whole changing a lot. So it's nice to be talking football.
We've had many off seasons like that here over the past couple of years, and so yes, for probably the last 3, I would say, off seasons at least, it has been good to get to this point in the summer to where you're over the hump and feeling like, okay, football is on the horizon. So we will be talking a good amount of football tonight. The first thing we want to get into, though, is our rapid fire news here. And there was a big ripple effect, I would say, that came out of this, and I think you can speak to it. It was Joe Castiglione from Oklahoma. He's been the longtime AD at Oklahoma. It was announced that he's going to be stepping down from his position there, and I think it's going to be next school year. Is that correct? So, or is it like 6 months or something?
It's a little unclear, I think.
Yeah.
At the moment, it says the timeline that was given out in the report I read just said that he's announced his retirement. It will be sometime during the next school year, but he's not going to, step away until a successor is named. So, to me, that seems like he could finish out the school year and be done in, April or May of 26, or if they, find somebody and he's on board with it, then he might, bounce a little bit sooner. But ultimately, yes, his intention to retire is a big deal because he's the longest tenured AD in college athletics. So he was hired in July of 98 at Oklahoma after a couple years at Mizzou, actually, as their AD. So just extremely seasoned athletic director, won several awards for like athletic director of the year. He won it twice according to the Sports Business Journal. And then he also won it twice according to the Collegiate Athletic Directors Association. So he very well respected amongst his peers. I think even, a Texas fan who hates Oklahoma would tell you he's done a fantastic job there. If you look at the athletic department as a whole from 1998 on. He obviously hired Bob Stoops in 1999, got them a national championship in football. Although they didn't win another national title, they have been really, up until the last 3 years, a top 5 program in the country year in, year out. They won the Big 12 countless times under his leadership. So, I would say it's a big announcement. It's sort of a trend, I would say, we're seeing. We had, I'm not going to remember their names, but I know the Notre Dame athletic director stepped down within the last couple of years due to all these changes, as did Ohio State's. So you're starting to see some of the old guard, I guess, if you want to call it that, step away, which I think is kind of a sign of the times, right? If you have made the money that those guys have made, you're entering your 60s and 70s, and you just don't want to put up with this headache, I don't think anybody would blame you. And it's also just not only do they not want to put up with it, I mean, a lot of them probably aren't qualified, right? I mean, the job that they took 30 years ago, it's totally different now when you're talking about revenue sharing and NIL and the transfer portal. So I think pretty big news. I think it'll be interesting to see what direction Oklahoma goes here, having been such a stable athletic department. And then to take it back to what we talk about most on here and love and care about is SEC football. We talked about Brent Venables being on the hot seat. Well, now his dude is also out the door, so he doesn't have his buddy to protect him. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that Castiglione was there when Venables was there, so they have known each other for 15, 20 years. Obviously, he hired him away from Clemson. He likes Venables, trusts Venables, and is, in my opinion, I guess it'll depend on who they hire, but is probably much more likely to give Venables the benefit of the doubt than some person who, takes the job. And we see that all the time in college athletics, where athletic directors want to get their guy in the door. So, if you're Oklahoma this year and you go 7-5, 8-4, where Castiglione might give Venables the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, that's improvement, or, I like the direction, whatever he may say to justify it. I think whoever comes in next is probably much more likely to say, no, let me get my guy in. This is 4 years of Venables that have been below our standards, and he's out the door. So again, I think just adds to the, adds to the pressure that Venables is under.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And like you said, the old guard starting to kind of move out. And frankly, I think time for some fresh blood at these places, right? Castiglione's done a great job. He could have stayed there another 5-10 years if he wanted to. But these jobs have changed so much, even just in the past 5 years, to the point where you need, I think, people who are, in their 40s, say, right, in late 30s, 40s, early 50s, maybe, who are watching all these changes. And yeah, just time for some fresh blood. If I was these guys, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd be ready to retire. Like, get me out of this. This is getting ridiculous. This isn't what I signed up for. College athletics has completely changed over the last 5 years, as we've talked about, ad nauseum on this show and on many others throughout the college football landscape. Polar Knights has a great comment here. I have a feeling I know who this is. Hammer, you look so good on camera. Please leave some ladies for the rest of us.
Thank you, Polar Knights. I appreciate it. I have my background changes every week, so I'm glad at least I look presentable on camera every week, since I'm constantly, moving and changing places here. So thank you very much.
For not mentioning me, you're getting kicked out of the stream. So, but anyway, okay. So our next one that we're going to get to here quickly in our rapid fire segment here is let's touch here on the transfer portal. So there was we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks for folks who don't know and aren't plugged in like we are, and like, most of the college football media are. There was a one-time transfer portal window, and Stacy Blackwood let us know last week. He helped me out. It's for 1 month, so it's going to be. It started on July 7th on Monday, and it's going to go all the way to, I think, around August 9th or something like that.
August 5th.
August 5th. So 1 month essentially, and what it was because after the House settlement came through with all the NIL and everything like that, the judge essentially said, you guys need to allow for players to leave because because of the roster limits that were put in under that House settlement. Now there's going to be some roster turnover and some different hard conversations, at certain schools, et cetera. So the judge, she wanted players to be allowed to be able to leave if there was going to be, and so they didn't get left out in the dust, essentially. So because of that, there's this transfer portal window that we've got here for a month. And no one was really sure what to expect from it. How many kids were we going to see in the portal? Were we going to see a lot? Were we going to see a flood? Was it going to be high-end talent in it? Was there going to be, low-end talent in it? What was it going to look like? I don't think many people expected it to be a flood or that there would be a ton of high-end talent necessarily that entered the portal. And that's kind of what we've seen. There really hasn't been a flood of kids. It hasn't been a ton of kids who have entered. I'm looking at the 247 board right now in terms of who's entered the transfer portal since the first. There was only, according to 247, and this is not, live necessarily. Sometimes they miss a couple kids, but they add them in as soon as they can. But there was only one kid who entered on the first, and he ended up committing to FAU. And then there was Demarius McGee. He is the highest rated player so far. There was actually one more 4-star. So there's 2 4-stars in the portal who have entered the portal since the first. And the first one was, as I mentioned, Demarius McGee, a cornerback from Kansas. I believe he's already transferred once. I think he transferred from somewhere else, maybe Miami or something like that, to Kansas. So now I think he's again in the portal. Didn't get as much playing time as he expected at Kansas. And then there was one more 4-star. That was Jalen Harrell, who went from UMass to Duquesne. A little surprising there.
Yeah.
But,
so is he really a 4-star? If he's
I don't know what that's all about. But maybe he just wanted to go home. I don't know. But anyway, yes, a 4-star who committed to Duquesne. But anyway, other than that, it's a bunch of 3-stars. Really, not much from big programs. Aiden McCowan entered from Arkansas, but he's doesn't even have a star listed, to be frank. You had Jaden Doss, a 3-star wide receiver from Nebraska, entered the portal. And otherwise, it's been kind of all quiet on the Western Front. So we'll expect to see a couple more. There may be a couple surprises out there, but so far it's been a kind of hush-hush on the transfer portal front.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing. We don't need to spend much time on it, but when I looked this morning for the newsletter, I was glad to see that it was quiet. There's not many guys entering because we talk about how you're behind the 8 ball if you enter the portal at the end of spring ball. I mean, now you're not even getting to, you don't even meet anybody until fall camp, day 1, basically. So, because it's a dead period. There's no summer workouts going on right now, I don't think. So it's, it would be a bad idea, in my opinion. If I were an agent advising anybody, even if you want to transfer, I would say, shut up, play this fall, enter in December, because transferring right now, you're not going to play. You're just not going to play unless you're, somebody who's really good. And if you're really good, you're being taken care of where you're currently at. Exactly.
And I think you made a good point about that. I think you touched on it in the newsletter today, just about how now with the payments and a lot of these contracts are locked in at this point. And also with the NIL now and the House settlement and the payments starting to get doled out, even though there's been a couple hiccups with that thus far, kids are now getting payment where they're at. And so they're not necessarily looking for, another, maybe a big payout somewhere else. So anyway, because it's quiet right there, I think it is a good thing, like you mentioned. All right, next quick hitter here. Let's go to Kentucky real quick. They've been on a heater. Mark Stoops, he's got a little bit of momentum. All that to say, let's preface it here real quick. They got 15 commits in total, so they're expected to get, probably another at least 10 commits, I would think, over the course of this cycle, just depending on their numbers a little bit. But 15 commits so far. Right now, let's pump the brakes a little bit. They have momentum, which we'll talk about here in a second, but they're also still the 45th class overall, according to 247. So a lot of work to do as well. However, Mark Stoops got 5 4-stars, I think it was, over the past 3 weeks is what it is. So he has been hot on the trail right now. He got a 4-star quarterback, Matt Patansky, I think his name is. I'm probably saying that wrong, so somebody correct me in the comments if you can. But Matt Patansky, 4-star quarterback from Ohio. Denarius Gray, a 4-star wide receiver from Florida. Messiah Tilson, he was a 4-star safety. They got Lincoln Watkins as well. I'm not sure exactly his position. And then Tyreek Jemison, he's a 4-star offensive tackle. That kid is a big boy. He's a 6'5", 315 offensive tackle out of Georgia. Lincoln Watkins, he's a tight end, 6'4", 233 out of Port Huron, Michigan. I said his name wrong. I'm figuring it out now. Ponatoski, something like that, quarterback out of Cincinnati, Ohio. So Mark Stoops, a lot of people have been talking about him. Hey, he's on the hot seat, or maybe it's getting stale at Kentucky. We've talked about it on this show before. It probably needs to have, I don't know, 6 wins at a minimum to really feel like he's in a good place. And even then, I think you're pretty worried. I think he needs to get back to where Kentucky has been under his leadership. Maybe not a 10-win season, right? They've hit 10 wins, I think, once in his tenure, maybe twice. But they've been a consistent 8+ win team under Mark Stoops for the entirety of his tenure. So a little bit of momentum on the trail for him, which is really nice to see. And we'll see if it continues. I think like I said, they need to pump those numbers up going through the end of the cycle. But it was good to see a little bit of momentum in Lexington, especially going into a really pivotal year, I would say, in Mark Stoops' tenure in Lexington.
Yeah, I agree. Sign of life. We highlighted last week Auburn's recruiting struggles, and Kentucky typically doesn't, nor are they expected to recruit at the level that Auburn is and does. But with Stoops, when Kentucky has been good, they've been recruiting at a top 30, oftentimes top 25 level. So, like you said, they sit at 45 now. They're on a bit of a hot streak, but they need to continue that. And at least, again, sign of life. There's more work to be done, but it doesn't seem like he's throwing in the towel, which I would not expect Mark Stoops to ever do. But good to see a little bit of life on the recruiting trail from the Wildcats.
Definitely. All right, our last quick hitter, and then we can run right into our main segment here of the over-unders, our part 4 of the over-unders. SEC Media Days, right around the corner, starts next week, July 14th through the 17th. And what are you looking for? Just give me, 1 or 2 things that you're watching for here at SEC Media Days. What you're excited about, looking forward to when they kick things off in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm interested to hear what the coaches have to say about all the changes that we've seen. I don't know if you saw some of the news items out of Big 12 Media Days, but there was a lot of chatter about this and how, multiple coaches, I think Dillingham and Satterfield at Cincinnati, both were saying like, yeah, it's still the Wild West. Like there's still stuff going on that people say is against the rules that, so I'm interested to see what the SEC coaches have to say about that. And then just 2 things that I pointed out in the newsletter this morning that I thought were interesting. First, Gunnar Stockton will be in attendance for Georgia, which I thought was a big deal. I would not expect Kirby nor him to say anything about his starting position. However, I think this is a very big hat tip that he will be the starter in the fall, which is, I think, the first we've heard, really anything about it, but just goes to show that he's respected amongst the coaching staff, his teammates. And if he's not going to start, why on earth would you bring him to SEC Media Days? So I thought that was interesting. And then on the flip side, obviously we're Aggies, so I don't want to read too much into this, but I was surprised that Marcel Reed was not on A&M's list. They ultimately decided to bring Torian York, who was there last year, Will Lee, who was the best defensive back they had a year ago, and then Armaj Reed Adams, who is a guard on the O-line and also had a fantastic season last year would have gotten drafted, decide to come back. So they're bringing a ton of, veterans, and maybe they just don't want to expose Reed to a bunch of questions and put any sort of pressure on him. I don't know. I pointed out because of all the solidified starters in the SEC, of which Reed is one, he's the only one that won't be there. So the other teams that are not bringing a quarterback are Mizzou, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama, none of which have a returning solidified starter. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, they're bringing older guys that won't have this opportunity down the road. That could be part of the decision making of like, hey, you're about to graduate, you'll be gone. Why don't we bring you along as where Reed has a couple more years? But just something I thought was intriguing and something to think about.
Yeah, one thing you actually touched on there was something I was looking at, which is that it looks like while Georgia maybe tipping their cap, okay, it's going to be Gunnar Stockton. He's at SEC Media Days. He's probably the starter, right? Alabama did not tip their cap, right? We've got three that are in contention there with Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Keelan Russell. Most are expecting what we're hearing out of camp, what we're hearing across the media for the most part, including folks like Greg McElroy and others have said that they believe it's Ty Simpson. I know Rick and Bonnie here, who just showed one of their comments. They join us every week, and I know that Rick also believes it's probably going to be Ty Simpson, the former 5-star who's been there for a long time. So interesting, though, that Ty Simpson was not there. So Kalen DeBoer is not tipping his cap just yet on exactly who the starter is going to be at Alabama. Also, I'm going to put this in the chat here for folks, at least on YouTube, to see. This is just the full announced list. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go through and check out, whether it's you're a Mizzou fan, an Arkansas fan, what have you, you can see who exactly from your school is going to be going to SEC Media Days. I just love SEC Media Days because it means like we're that dang close to football. We're about to strap it up and about to really get to talk about what we love in this industry, which is talking about the games, talking about the atmospheres, talking about everything that is in season. And I'm also excited to see. I just love like watching some of these coaches. Like Lane Kiffin. I absolutely love, for all our Ole Miss friends who are watching us from Stephen Willis's Twitter. I love Lane Kiffin because he's good for about 6 different jabs at 6 different coaches and different programs at SEC Media Days. And then same with like Elijah Drinkwitz at Mizzou. He's going to pull no punches. That guy is arrogant and cocky, and it's just fun to watch and fun to just kind of see the reporters also jab and just kind of, poke and prod and ask questions in certain ways to try and get them to get them a good quote. And then finally, I would say too, I love the series that Marty and McGee do when they go to SEC Media Days that they feature on SEC Network. They sit down with every single coach and talk to them for about 10 minutes. And you always get some good sound bites and some interesting stuff that comes out of those interviews. So I'm certainly looking forward to it. And we will have plenty of coverage of that next week. And we'll also be talking about it in the newsletter for sure. So sign up again, biscuitssec.com/newsletter. For the Morning Biscuits newsletter. That'll be out next Wednesday, and we will discuss everything that is going on with SEC Media Days. So, all right, that is going to do it for our segment on for SEC Media Days and our rapid fire news that's been going on around the SEC. And we will get into our over-unders here in just a second. But before we do that, we're presented by the Steer Agency. And just wanted to do our quick ad read, which isn't in my sheet tonight. Yes, it is. Football is all about strategy, just like winning in business. Whether you're dialing up the perfect play on Saturdays or looking to dominate in public affairs, PR, or digital marketing, you need a team that delivers results. That's where the Steer Agency comes in. They craft winning strategies that get you seen, heard, and ahead of the competition. Don't just play the game, control it. Visit thesteeragency.com today to take your brand to the next level. All right. Thank you to those guys for sponsoring the show. And all right, let's get into the bulk of it. We are on time tonight, which is impressive. But over-under win totals. This is part 4 of our series. If you would like to go back and see all the picks that we made on our over-under series from part 1 to part 3, you can go back on our YouTube. All of that is archived on our YouTube, so you can check those out. And just to preface this again, we've done a bad job of prefacing this in previous shows, but this is gut reaction. So we haven't done a ton of research into this. We haven't thought too hard about it. This is like put it on the screen, and then this is just our unfiltered thoughts on whether or not we think these teams are going to be over their win total, which is from FanDuel, or they're going to be under the line on their win total. And we're going to have a lot more in-depth that we're working on right now. Every single year we started when the conference was 14. It was the 14 and 14s, and now it's the 16 and 16. So every team we go through comprehensively. We look at everything in total of what's going on with the program. So, for instance, Oklahoma's got an athletic director leaving that we just talked about earlier in the show. What are they investing into their stadium? What does it look like for their NIL donations? Total program view. And then we zoom in to think about, okay, overall, what does that look like for this program going forward? And what does that mean for 2025? What's going on with the roster? And then what we think about what's going to happen with that team in 25. So we will revive the blog for that one. Hammer's been working on a couple, and I will work on a couple. We'll split them in half and have all of those out before we get to the season, which kicks off in late August. So, all right. Let's get into it then and give our gut reaction takes here on our 4 teams that we got tonight. Let's start first with one that needs a lot of help here. How about Mississippi State? Had a rough 2024, as you can see there in the top right corner. 2-10 overall, 0-8 in the SEC. They lost their starting quarterback. He left and now is the backup at LSU. And over-under here, you can see on the left-hand side, over-under is set at 3.5 wins. So they start the season. We were talking about this pre-show, Hammer. Pretty odd to be going to Southern Miss. But August 30th, they are headed to Southern Miss. September 6th, you got Arizona State at home. That one was a really close game last year. It was one of Arizona State's only 2 losses on the regular season. Mississippi State clipped them just barely, if I remember that. Is that correct? Maybe that was 2 years ago. I think no. Arizona State beat them last year.
Yeah, it was a close game, but Arizona State got them.
That's right. Arizona State got them. So Arizona State, and then you got Alcorn State on September 13th. Then September 20th, you got NIU. And then September 27th, you get Tennessee. So you got 4 straight home games there until you have to go to Texas A&M and Kyle Field on October 4th. They have a bye on October 11th, right there before you get to go to the Swamp to play Florida. So that's a nice bye right in there. And then you go October 25th, you got Texas in Starkville. And then you have November 1st, you head to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas, which could be in wounded animal mode at that point, potentially. November 8th, you get Georgia. November 15th, you go to Columbia to take on Mizzou, get a bye way late in the season there. And then you have Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl there on November 28th. So, all right, Hammer, what are you thinking in terms of gut reaction time, Mississippi State?
Yeah, this is kind of, like you're gonna cover your nose and you don't want to smell any of the dirty, trash. No offense to Mississippi State fans, but I'm gonna say over, and I'm just gonna plug my nose when I'm doing it because I can't believe I'm saying it. But 3.5 is super low, and if you look back at their schedule, I mean they should beat Southern Miss. I know it's an away game and Southern Miss, but Southern Miss has not been that good. Maybe our friend Mike Huseman could help us out on the Sun Belt preview, but I'm not expecting Southern Miss to be that good. So although it's a weird road game, I think they should win that one. And then you also have Alcorn State and Northern Illinois at home. So I'm just going to give them 3 wins there. And then I'm going to say, all right, you got, 9 games here. Can you give me 1? And I think that Arizona State game will be interesting. They gave them a game in Tempe last year. It's in Starkville. It's week 2. So whatever happens down the road for Mississippi State, they might be a dead team walking come mid-October, but they're not going to be September 6th. I expect that will be sold out. It's a 7:30 p.m. kick. So I think that's a game that they could sneak up on Arizona State, especially with some of the turnover that Arizona State, has. I know their quarterback Levitt is back, and he's a stud. So it's not going to be an easy game. I'm just saying they could get that one. If they don't, this could be in trouble because winning an SEC game is going to be tough, especially with the draw that they get. You'd much prefer to have Arkansas at home, for instance, or maybe even Florida at home as opposed to Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss. Your home games where you might jump up and bite somebody. You're kind of playing some heavyweights there. Tennessee, also a home game. So I'm just going to roll the dice here and say that Lebby can get them to 4. I don't expect any more than 4, but 3.5 I think is a gettable number in year 2 under Lebby.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. I struggle with getting there just because of how much turnover happened at Mississippi State. The roster completely flipped. They've had an Arkansas situation. Arkansas, over the last 2 years, as we've talked about on this show, roster has flipped. There has been a lot of different kids coming in and going out, right? Which we've seen just makes it difficult for the most part, not for everybody, but seems to be over the last couple of years of the transfer portal. The rule seems to be taking shape that the rule is you supplement and plug holes on your roster, but you don't want to have a ton of influx and a ton of outflow. That just makes it very difficult for continuity, leadership, locker room, culture, and then also implementation, X's and O's, like roster construction in terms of coaches, putting kids up and down the depth chart. It's very, very difficult when you don't have some continuity. And there was a lot of turnover at Mississippi State from quarterback, which I was very frustrated to see President Van Buren leave Mississippi State. I frankly think that Jeff Lebby completely flubbed that one because he was flirting with other quarterbacks in the portal. And look, maybe there's stuff that I don't know, at the end of the day, and maybe he was going to leave anyway. But we talked about that midseason last year, that if Mississippi State can keep that kid, they have a real shot. They have 2 quarterbacks that they brought in, Blake Shapen, and they also brought in Luke Kromenhoek, who was a 4-star quarterback from Florida State. And not sure exactly who's going to start there. Looks like it's likely to be Blake Shapen.
Yeah, Shapen was actually there a year ago.
Oh, he was. That's right.
Got hurt. Yeah, so he got hurt early in the year, which is how Van Buren got thrust into action.
And he transferred in from Baylor. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, he was at Baylor, and he started at Baylor for 2 years before he left. So I'm not going to say he's a world beater, but he's at least got some experience. Has
some experience. Got hurt fairly early in the year last year, and so anyway, there's just so much. We'll get into it in our 16 and 16 for sure. There's been so much turnover there at Mississippi State. I'm just worried, and I look, okay, Southern Miss should be a win. Alcorn State should be a win. NIU should be a win, but NIU beat Notre Dame last year. Like, that's not necessarily – and they weren't – I mean, I think they ended up at like 6-6 or 7-5 or something. So it's not like they were, world beaters or that great. But they beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Like, you can't really overlook these guys. Our friend Mike Huseman, he mentioned it. I showed that comment earlier. Toledo rolled Mississippi State in Stark Vegas last year.
Yeah.
So can't discount these other games, right? And then I look down the schedule and I'm like, okay, well, who could be that 4th? Is it going to be Tennessee? I don't think so. Is it going to be Arizona State? That's maybe one of your best shots, frankly, like you said. You go to Florida? I don't think so. Not this year. Texas, doubt it, even though it's in Stark Vegas. Arkansas, another good shot. Georgia, Mizzou at Mizzou, I think makes it tough. And then you do get Ole Miss in Starkville this year. And we've talked about Ole Miss as well. We'll get into them in a minute. But they shouldn't be as talented, at least, as they were last year. But we're going to know a heck of a lot about that team come November, late November. So we'll see. I think I'm going to go under. I think Mississippi State gets to 3 this year.
That's fair. There's another good comment from our friend Mike here. I knew that Huff had taken the job at Southern Miss, which is probably a little bit was clouding my judgment because in my head I was thinking Southern Miss stunk a year ago.
Yeah.
Which they did, which is why they have a new coach. But Charles Huff, previously of Marshall, did a great job at Marshall. Mike would know a lot more about what went down there and why he's no longer at Marshall. But that makes me a little more nervous, I would say, about my overpick being that because I think he's a good coach and I think they'll be ready to play. But I will say if you are a gambler and you're riding with me here on the Mississippi State over, you're going to know you're not going to know for sure after week 1, but you're going to know if it's not going to hit. You're not going to have to sweat this out. If they lose to Southern Miss, there's no chance, right? So that's a big game, honestly. As crazy as that is to say, that's a big game. Being on the road against a Charles Huff and apparently most of Marshall's roster from a year ago, that will not be a pushover by any stretch.
Yeah, Rick, I agree with you. Dan Mullen should have never left MSU. He could have had them at 8 wins plus, I think, every single year. But, hey, when Florida calls, it's tough to turn them down. But we all know how that one worked out. So hindsight 2020, yeah, probably should have stayed in Stark Vegas. And another one for Mike. Mike, you're exactly right. They didn't make me go grab any Windows 95 logos. Hammer made the schedules this week, so they didn't make him go find any Windows 95 logos. I'm sure there's going to be a couple Windows 95 logos coming up here when we get to the rest of them. One last quick question for you on Mississippi State, because I think we're doing well on time here. Even if Mississippi State wins 3 games, 4 games this year, right? I don't think Jeff Lebby's getting fired. But how much runway do you think he really has in Mississippi State? Because they're not going to tolerate that forever.
No, definitely not. I think a lot of it depends on how competitive they are. We talk about that a lot when you have a turnaround like this or a rebuild like this. I mean, we don't need to educate our viewers know what happened, right? I mean, Mike Leach passed away. They went with Arnett sort of by default. Yeah. He did not work out. Good D coordinator, not good head coach. Things went very poor under his 1 year, and they cut bait quickly, as I think they should have, and bring in Lebby. And so he had a very tall task ahead of him. I think last year's a complete mulligan. Nobody holds that against him. But I think this year, regardless of what the final record is, as you said, they won't tolerate what happened last year forever. So even if they only get to 3 wins, they need to be more competitive. There was a few flashes in the pan last year of competitiveness. The Georgia game was quasi-close for a bit. The A&M game was semi-close. Obviously, the Arizona State game was close, and in hindsight, that looked a lot better. But as Mike brought up, they also got blown out at home to Toledo, and they went 2-10. So for me, I think it's more about how competitive are they. Does it look like they're making any strides in year 2? But I'm with you. I think regardless of what the record is, even if they do get blown out, they're not going to fire him because, they probably are just not in a position to do that, and it would only be 2 years.
For sure. I think one thing to keep in mind, too, with all these firings, right, we were in an era where you had the money to fire coaches like that, right, who were underperforming. I think going forward, some schools, not all, some schools have a ton of money and it's never going to matter. But I think for the most part, I think you're going to see probably 90% of schools. I think we're going to see schools retain coaches and give them a little bit more leash and a little bit more rope, because you're going to have to be making payments now to your players.
True.
You're now that chunk of money that was coming in from donors, to where donors would get pissed and say, to hell with it, screw this, right? Like, let's fire him, let's get rid of him, what have you. A lot of that money is being funneled now to players. And so And you're also got to remember you still have to keep up with the facilities arms race and all these other things that are going on. So I think the coaches in the long run, going forward now, are going to get much more rope than maybe they previously had. So, all right, let's get on to the next one. And by the way, just so you guys are aware, Mike, I think you're probably right here. Get to 4 wins, okay, 3 or less, and 2026 the seats start to get hot. If you guys haven't checked out Mike's new show, Mike joins us every week on Thursday nights on SEC After Dark. So we'll be on SEC After Dark tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. And he's also got a new show on the After Dark Network called Off Season After Dark. He's been doing a great job on it. I think it was yesterday. Mike, you'll have to remind us exactly when the show is. I think it's on Tuesday nights. But he did a great Sun Belt preview. Also had a gentleman on from Syracuse on the Syracuse beat and did an ACC preview as well 2 weeks ago. So he's doing a great job on that. And be sure to check him out at Off Season After Dark on the After Dark Network on YouTube for sure. All right, let's go to Missouri.
Yeah, you want me to intro them, and you can give me your thoughts first.
Sure.
So here's Mizzou's 2025 schedule. So just to recap, 2024 they got to 10 wins again. They went 9-3 in the regular season, got a bowl win, went 5-3 in the SEC, back-to-back 10-win seasons for Drink and Mizzou. Again, if you're counting the bowls, if not, it's a 10-win and a 9-win, or I guess 11-win. In the year prior when they won the bowl game.
Oh, the 11, yeah. 2 years ago it was 11 when they beat Ohio State. That's right.
Anywho, 9-3 in the regular season, 5-3 in the SEC. Their over under this season is set at 7.5. Pretty manageable schedule here, which I think played to their favor a year ago, since the schedule's basically just flipped. So they start out week 1 hosting Central Arkansas, so getting the season off with a bang. September 6th, they host Kansas, which should be a super fun game, sort of renewed rivalry there, the border war that we haven't seen, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think we've seen that since they left the Big 12, unless I'm totally whiffing on that. So that should be a fun game in Columbia. Then they host Louisiana, the Ragin' Cajuns, the 13th. September 20th, they host South Carolina, and then the 27th, they host UMass. So they start off with 5 straight home games, go to a bye on October 4th, then their 6th consecutive home game, and they host Alabama in Columbia. So really, really front-loaded home schedule for Mizzou. Could get off to a pretty hot start. Then things get tougher. So they go on the road October 18th at Auburn, on the road the following week at Vandy. Then they get a bye at the beginning of November and close it out at home against A&M, at home against Mississippi State, and then with 2 road games at Oklahoma and at Arkansas to finish the season. So with that, what is your gut reaction here? Can Mizzou get over 7.5 wins here?
I think they can. But I'm a little hesitant, and it's for similar reasons to Mississippi State, although not as crazy as Mississippi State. Mississippi State had a lot of roster turnover. For Mizzou, it's just a lot about production. You're losing Brady Cook, you're losing Luther Burden on offense, and that's just going to be difficult. You're also losing Theo Weiss, so your top 2 wide receivers and your quarterback, who Brady Cook willed those guys to multiple wins last year. Guy was just a gamer. He had the it factor, and he and Drink were like this, when it came to the offense. They talk about having another coach on the field, for quarterbacks who have been in the system for a long time and who just kind of embody their head coach or their offensive coordinator on the field. And the offensive coordinator doesn't really have to tell them much, right? It's like telepathic. Brady Cook was like that for Missouri, especially last year. So them having to replace all that production on offense worries me a little bit. You got Bo Pribula, who was the backup at Penn State. He comes in this year is likely to be the starter. And, we'll do, again, 16-16. We'll do a much larger deep dive into the roster. The other side of it, too, this defense has to be better. The defense got them to 9 wins in the regular season last year, but there was a couple games there where they got absolutely smoked. And that was at College Station and Kyle Field, and then Alabama, when they went to Alabama last year, 34-0, right? And that was one of the weaker offensive teams that Alabama's had in a long time. They showed flashes, right? I mean, they scored 40-something against Georgia, and they scored 34 against Mizzou. They had some games, but there was also some games where you were like, man, what is going on with this Alabama offense? I mean, multiple games. So that Alabama, I was just a little surprised to see Alabama stick it to Mizzou like they did last year. So I want to see a little bit more from that defense, especially this year. I think the defense, because of how much they lost on offense, the defense is going to have to pick up some slack, especially through that first part of the year as the offense, starts to come online and they start to, hit their marks. They start to really, settle into the offense with these new faces that are going to be around. So with that said, though, pulling this back up for a second here, the schedule, I'm talking about how, okay, the offense needs to get online here over the first part of the season. You got 5 straight home games to do it, and
6.
6 straight, excuse me. Yeah, 6. That's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
I don't know. The SEC scheduling office is just wild.
It is insane.
So yeah, you get 6 straight home games to get that offense going. And I think they're going to be able to do it. At this point, I've been kind of a downer on Drink at times. You can go back and clip me on different things, but he keeps proving me wrong. And 2 straight double-digit win seasons. And at this point, with the way that this schedule shakes out, I feel pretty dang good that they're going to be able to get and hit that over and get to 8 wins, if not more this year. So what are your thoughts?
I was pretty torn on this one, but ultimately my gut reaction was under. The schedule is mostly what scares me because, as you brought up, 6 straight home games with a bye baked in to start the season. You could very easily see this team just get hot. It's like you said, this is more ammo or fodder for me, at least, to say we need to go to 9 games. Not to say that their SEC schedule in particular is weak, but Central Arkansas, Louisiana, and UMass at home. Sure, you got Kansas, but it's still Kansas. Anyway. The schedule is what scares me, but I think a lot of the points you brought up is kind of what leads me to go under here, and that is I don't know if I trust Bo Pribula. I'm looking at he was a 4-star recruit, so he was highly regarded, a good runner while he was at Penn State. In 2 years, he had 10 rushing touchdowns and nearly 500 yards across 2 seasons, averaging about 6 yards a carry or a little over. But passing wise, he's in his college career attempted 56 passes. So we don't know what he can do with the ball in his hands. We know he can run the ball. We don't know if he can throw, and that worries me a little bit. And then, again, you brought it up. Drink continues to prove people wrong, such as myself, and it's very possible he will do it again this year. But I just kind of have to go back to law averages here, right? And say back-to-back, 10-win seasons or a 10-win and a 9-win regular season for Mizzou, like that is not normal. The only time they really saw that was a few years under Gary Pinkel. And to expect them now, I know they're over under 7.5, so they don't have to get there. 8-4 hits the number here for them. But I just have to think with all the production they lost that you brought up at quarterback with Cook, multiple wide receivers, I just think they're going to take a step back. Kansas is not a pushover. I think they will win that game, especially being at home. But, Jalen Daniels is in his 8th year of college football. They're a very well-coached team, so that's not a pushover. And then you look at their conference schedule, and I think, we saw this really the last 2 years with Missouri. They play a lot of close games, and they've won a lot of close games the past couple of years. But it's, again, law of averages. At some point, that has to turn. Vanderbilt took them to double overtime last year. Well, now they got to go to Nashville. Auburn had them in Columbia last year, and they let them off the hook. Well, now they got to go to Auburn. And then they close with at Oklahoma, at Arkansas. I'm going to go under here, just banking on the fact that Mizzou's kind of got to come back to the mean here at some point. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Mike, yeah, I get it. I know why it scares you. Mizzou has had the Gamecocks number, and they get them, like we talked about, 6 straight home games. The Gamecocks are game number 4 in that homestand for Mizzou.
And that's a game I'm totally with you, Mike. I could see Missouri beating South Carolina at home, but then still not hitting the under because –
hitting the over.
Yeah, sorry, hitting the over because, again, that's pretty early in the season. They're coming off 3 home games. They get South Carolina at home. They always play them tough. Then they get UMass. And then once the real schedule starts, again, would anybody be surprised if Missouri beats South Carolina in a close game? They're riding high like they were last year, top 10 team. And then Alabama pounds them. And then they go on the road to Auburn and lose a close one. And then they go on the road to Vanderbilt and lose a close one. And then you look up and it's like, oh, they're 1-3 in the SEC. So,
yeah,
very volatile team, I think, again, with not as much experience. But like I said, drink keeps proving people wrong. It's a workable schedule, so I could see it.
For sure. All right, we are behind schedule again now, so we're going to probably do some more extra football here on Biscuits SEC, which is becoming the norm. But for one last quick thing on Mizzou, the border war has not been played since 2011. So you're right. Since the Big 12, the old Big 12 dismantled, and you had A&M and Mizzou leave for the SEC way back in 2012. Kansas and Missouri have not played. Mizzou did win the last 3 games in the Big 12 against Kansas. So it'll be fun to watch that one revived this year. All right, let's go into our alma mater, the Texas A&M Aggies. So A&M last year, they were 8-4 overall with the bowl. They were 8-5, lost a heartbreaker to USC, and honestly, a completely inexcusable loss.
Yeah.
5-3 in the SEC. The Aggies started off hot, started off 5-0 in the SEC, and then dropped their last 3 in the SEC, which dropped them out of the contention for the SEC championship, which they were in all the way up until the Texas game last year. This season, FanDuel has them at 7.5. They start out with UTSA on August 30th in Kyle Field, and then Utah State on September 6th. Then they get the rematch with Notre Dame. This year they have to go to South Bend. And then September 27th, they get Auburn at home in a revenge game. As some will remember, Auburn clipped the Aggies last year and really started to send their season into a spiral. And then Mississippi State on October 4th. October 11th, they head to the Swamp. And then October 18th, you are in Fayetteville. This is not in Dallas this year. This is on campus now. And it is going to be in Fayetteville this year. And the next year, it will be in Kyle Field. October 25th is in Tiger Stadium at LSU. Then you get a bye. And then November 8th, you're at Mizzou. November 15th, you get South Carolina. You've had South Carolina's number for most of the time in the SEC, but South Carolina has taken 2 out of 3 from the Aggies in the last 3 years. November 22nd, you are back home for a gimme, a cupcake against Samford. And then November 28th, you head to Austin to take on the Longhorns. First time the Aggies will have been in Austin since 2010, I believe.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. There's a lot of question marks with this Aggie team. Where is your head at in terms of over/under for the Aggies in 25?
I don't really like the schedule. I think it's a very tough schedule. Obviously, the out-of-conference game in South Bend is brutal. And then I hate the back-to-back-to-back road games at Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri. However, and this is probably my maroon Kool-Aid, maroon colored glasses speaking, but I'm going to go over here. The joke is Texas 8-4, right? So all we got to do is get to 8-4, which we pretty much do every year outside of, a couple years at the tail end of Jimbo's tenure, and we hit the over. So I think we can get to 8-4. I think A&M honestly will be better than they were a year ago. They didn't really lose a ton to the draft outside of the defensive line, which is a big question mark. They had 3 players drafted there. However, you and I have talked about this, of course. The guys that they had drafted deserve to be drafted and are physical specimens, but statistically, none of them did much last year. I know that doesn't tell the whole tale, especially for a defensive lineman in terms of the impact they have on the game, but none of them were all conference, right? It's not like those guys were really, really, really producing at a high level for A&M. So the defensive line is definitely a question mark, but if that's really the only place that they lost a ton of, snaps and production, I think overall they should be better. I also like Marcel Reed returning as a solidified starter. I like Colin Klein in that offense being in year 2. And I like A&M returning 7, their top 7 snap count guys on the offensive line. So obviously that includes, dudes who started the year last year as, starters and then were injured or replaced, what have you. But they should have a very solid veteran, old man offensive line that should be able to help Reed out. I think with Reed and with Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens in the backfield. Also, they still have Amari Daniels, who's just been a solid, player for 3 years now. So questions on defense at the defensive line in particular. The secondary was not good last year. And then I would say wide receiver is a big question mark. They need someone to step up there. But I think they're probably a better team than they were a year ago overall. So I think they can get to at least 8 wins and cash the over here.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, Texas 8-4, right? That's what you said. Somehow, some way, the Aggies get to 8. And I think they can get to 8 here this year as well. The schedule, like you said, there's a couple of stumbling blocks there. That 3-game road stretch is tough. But you also get a bye before you head to Missouri. Missouri generally, the Aggies generally have their number for the most part. And then I would dive a little bit deeper into a couple of the things that you touched on. I think the Aggies will be better overall. Typically in the past, the Aggies have done the best when they have a really good offensive line. Think 2012. With Johnny Manziel. They had a couple of high draft picks on that offensive line, and go back and watch some of those Johnny football clips. He had all freaking day back there to figure out who to throw to. And then the other one was in 2020 when the Aggies got really close to making the college football playoff. They had a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line, a very seasoned and veteran offensive line. This year, they're going to have the same. The offensive line has had its struggles at times, but as we talked about on last week's show, when you have the offensive line that is cohesive and has had multiple years together and they don't have Steve Adazio as their offensive line coach, then you know that this offensive line is probably going to be pretty daggum good. And they made a lot of strides last year, which Aggies were hoping for. I expect them to make even more strides this year. You have Reuben Owens, who is coming off of injury, and you also have Le'Veon Moss coming off of injury. Both of those, though, Le'Veon Moss was one of the best running backs in the country last year before he got injured. Reuben Owens was expected to be one of the best running backs in the SEC before he got injured in the preseason. So I think both those guys back, and depending on Le'Veon Moss's health, I expect Reuben Owens to be fully healthy. But those two guys, I think, are going to be a really big focal point of this offense, along with that offensive line. I expect Marcel Reed to make a jump as well. The one thing on offense that I'm a little bit worried about, and you mentioned it at wide receiver, but at wide receiver, I'm most worried about the threat in the red zone. The Aggies had a little bit of trouble at times in the red zone, and last year they had Noah Thomas to throw to, and Theo Ostrom, the tight end. Theo is back. Noah Thomas is now at Georgia. So who is going to be that threat to go up and be that possession receiver to just throw a ball up on 3rd and 10, right, or 3rd and 15? Who's going to be that possession receiver when you get into the red zone and need to throw it up on a fade route? I don't know who that is yet. I don't know if the Aggies have it. They did stack the tight end class in the transfer portal. So there's a couple guys. Sounds like they may try to utilize the tight end in that way versus wide receiver this year, because not a lot of size on the outside for the Aggies. A lot of talent, not a lot of size. So that's my worry on offense. On defense, you mentioned it, the defensive line. I think the linebacker position is in a good place. The secondary is what worries me most. There's a lot of talent, but also a lot of worry. The Aggies got smoked on the back end in multiple games, especially towards the end of the season. They made Peyton Thorne, the Aggies do this at least once a year, but they made Peyton Thorne look like a Heisman candidate. And Peyton Thorne was throwing picks, and, he looked pretty bad for a lot of games last year, but he was picking apart the A&M defense, especially early in that game. So I'm most worried about the secondary. Looking at the schedule, though, I do think that the Aggies are going to be able to get to that over some way, somehow. They typically get to 8 wins. And I also trust Mike Elko, man. There was a little bit of trust that was broken late in the year, when things went a little bit sideways. But I do like the fact that Mike Elko is going to be in charge of the defense this year. He has a defensive coordinator. He kept Jay Bateman, but he's taking over the reins. He's the man in charge. He's calling the defense. And I think Mike Elko is a really good coach. So I expect the Aggies to get to 8, and I expect them to challenge for 9 or 10.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I don't have anything else to add on the Aggies, and we're already over time. So let's get to our final team here, Ole Miss. So the Rebs, I'll go ahead and intro them. We've got interesting season ahead. So in 2024, they were 9-3 in the regular season, 5-3 in the SEC, narrowly missed the playoffs. Over under for 2025 set at 8.5. As we know, and we'll get into, they lost a lot off of last year's team, namely, Jackson Dart. So Austin Simmons comes in as the new starter, and we'll see how they do. But they'll start the season with Georgia State August 30th. Then they've got a revenge game on the road in Lexington, September 6th at Kentucky. Then they host Arkansas, host Tulane on September 20th, host LSU as well at the end of September. That should be an awesome game. Then they get a bye week. I think our graphic might be wrong here. There's no way. Okay, yeah, the graphic is wrong. They are playing Washington State, oddly enough, on the 11th, but it is in Oxford, not Pullman. That would be insane. So apologies there. They're playing Washington State, which is crazy enough, but it's in Oxford. Then they go to Athens to play Georgia on October 18th. On the 25th, they will go to Norman, play Oklahoma. And then they're going to host South Carolina, host the Citadel, host Florida, and then go to Mississippi State. Again, another mess up on the graphic there. That's my bad. But they will play in Starkville to close the season after a bye week on the 22nd. So what do you think? Can the Rebels get to 9 wins, or will they backslide a little bit in 2025?
I think a lot hinges here on Austin Simmons. How good is Austin Simmons? We saw a flash of it in the Georgia game last year when he led that touchdown drive. That was super impressive. And everybody, everything coming out of Oxford, everybody is super excited about this kid. Totally understand why. He's got a lot of talent. His ceiling is super high. He's obviously super smart. He came into college at 17 or whatever, 16. I don't know what it was, but he was super young, and a very smart kid for sure. So a lot of it to me hinges on him. How good is he? I think Ole Miss in general. I think even most Ole Miss fans will tell you that this Ole Miss team is likely less talented than last year's team. Not crazy less talented. There's still a lot of talent in Oxford. But last year's team was the one that was expected to make the run at the college football playoff. They fell a little bit short of that, but they still got to 9 wins last year in the regular season. I like how this schedule sets up for Ole Miss, frankly. You're going through it, and it's like, all right, their toughest road game this season is LSU, and that's September 27th. Or excuse me, not LSU, sorry, Georgia. Their toughest road game is Georgia on October 18th. But what I was trying to get at is that the rest of your big games, for the most part, are in Oxford. You get LSU in Oxford on September 27th. And then you get South Carolina in Oxford. Then you get Florida in Oxford, right? You have to go to Oklahoma, so don't discount that one. Can't say that one's a gimme necessarily. But I'm looking at the schedule and I'm thinking most of your difficult games, aside from Georgia, obviously that's the most difficult game on the schedule. But aside from Georgia, you get a lot of your tough games at home. With that, I do think Austin Simmons is going to be very good. And I also, at this point, how can you not trust Lane Kiffin to some degree? Lane Kiffin gets you to 8, 9, 10 wins a year. I was a little bit surprised to see the over-under at 8.5. They're really trying to squeeze you there on that line. But I think it's also because, hey, just look at the track record of Lane Kiffin when it comes to coaching, especially over the last couple of years, whether it be at FAU all the way to Ole Miss. The guy has a track record now where he wins 9 or more games a year. And so I think it's tough to say that, again, in my opinion, this schedule sets up pretty favorably for the Rebs. I think they're going to be able to hit that 9-win clip again. I don't exactly know how they're going to get there, but with all those games at home, with LSU and with Florida and with South Carolina at home, I think you're going to be able to get there.
Yeah, no argument from me here. I thought that the 8.5 number was pretty high too, based on a 9-3 record a year ago with what they lost. But kind of what you said at this point, I mean, it's hard not to trust Lane Kiffin. Now, as our friend Stephen Willis will say, he's due for a dud or two every season, as we saw last year with Kentucky and Florida, that ultimately kept them out of the 12-team playoff. But if the over-under's at 8.5, and I just have to get 9-3, well, great. He's got a couple stinkers built in. So I'm with you. I think Austin Simmons is going to be good. I think Kiffin is just very good with quarterbacks in general. So why would I not expect him to be good if Kiffin says and believes he's going to be good? I think if Simmons was not ready or not going to be good, Kiffin would have got somebody in the portal. And obviously that's not the case. So I'm going to trust him there that he's got a good quarterback on his team. And kind of what you said too, I think the schedule sets up pretty good. I mean, I don't think you're winning in Athens, but all the other games, like you said, they're kind of at home, or, at least you got a 50-50 chance. So if I've got one game that I'm feeling strongly you're not going to lose, and then probably 6 or 7 that I feel like, at least 6 that I think you're going to win, and you can split the remainder of those games, then yeah, you're kind of right there at 9-3, 8-4. So given that, I'm going to lean toward Kiffin and trusting him to get them back to 9.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one thing that's tough for Lane Kiffin this year is that he doesn't have that gimme game against Jimbo Fisher. So, it's been tough for him that he doesn't have that gimme game left on the schedule, but he's got at least the Citadel and Georgia State as his gimmies this year. So, all right, let's move on. Let's get to our last segment of the show here. We don't have a biscuit of the week this week. We will get back on that. Lots of graphics to make this week for schedules and everything else going on. But we have kind of a different Muschamp Coach of the Week this week. Again, as you guys know, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of, coaches, everything. I'm sure we'll have a good Muschamp Coach of the Week likely next week or over the next 2 weeks as we get into SEC Media Days. Guaranteed somebody's going to have, some good zinger one-liner or what have you that we'll be able to take, maybe from Lane Kiffin, maybe from an Elijah Drinkwitz. We'll see. But this week, as all of you know, the floods were happening in Kerrville, Texas. I'm stationed in Austin, and so that's about 2 hours northwest of where I'm at. And Hammer and I both have family who have daughters who have attended Camp Mystic for a very long time. And, thank God that none of them were there, and everybody from our family is safe. But there were many that could not say that. So our prayers are with those in Kerrville and around the surrounding area, as it wasn't just Kerrville that got hit. So it was a very unfortunate situation, but there also was, some silver lining here. And there was a gentleman who was in the Coast Guard who rescued over 160 girls from Camp Mystic. And it was his first mission, which is absolutely incredible. So we have a Muschamp Player of the Week who embodied, just a lot of courage and of character in what he did. And so he was on Good Morning America. So I'm going to play that clip right here.
Hey, yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'll kind of give you guys a quick synopsis of what was going on. The Coast Guard launched us and decided to send a rescue crew from Air Station Corpus Christi at about 6:30, 7 a.m. on Friday, the 4th of July. I just happened to be on the duty crew with Ian Hopper, Blair Rougefort, Seth Reeves, some of our crew members in the Coast Guard. And they sent us out. We kind of encountered some pretty serious weather, some of the worst flying we've ever dealt with personally. It took us, which should have been an hour flight, probably took us about 7 or 8. Just to get into the landing zone. Once made about 4 different approaches trying to get in, we were able to get boots on the ground with the Air National Guard, Department of Public Safety for Texas, game wardens. And we decided to leave me on scene at Camp Mystic. That was kind of our main triage site we were trying to help out with. And we decided, hey, if we leave the rescue swimmer on scene, we'll have more space in our Dolphin MH-65. So based on that, I got on scene, boots on the ground at Camp Mystic. Kind of discovered I was the only person there. As far as like first responders go. So I had about 200 kids mostly, all scared, terrified, cold, having probably the worst day of their life, and I just kind of needed to triage them, get them to a higher level of care, and get them off the flood zone with a lot of the US-60 Army helicopters.
So salute to Scott Ruskin. Did an incredible job there in some really adverse circumstances. And we just have to give him a salute, and thought that it would be good to highlight him and recognize him this week in a bit of a different Muschamp Coach of the Week. But really want to thank him for what he did, for saving so many girls, and also there were adults in there as well that he was able to save. So at the same time, our thoughts and prayers are with those in Kerrville and for all those who did lose loved ones in the flood. So anyway. Hammer, anything to say on that?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. I think amazing job, worth highlighting what Scott Ruskin did, and along with countless other first responders and just everyday people that lended a hand to those in need, and continues to do so, because whether it's prayers or physical help or donations, the rebuild process is very much ongoing. It's not, it's not over. So, anybody helping out down there, definitely give them a shout out, because it's, just a terrible situation. So tough situation, but like you said, some heroes can come from it. So just try to look at the best side of things, and definitely want to shout out people that are down there helping with boots on the ground.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's something as well. In situations like this, that's one of the great things about our country. Everybody comes together and figures out a way to move forward and to help those who are in need. And that's especially true throughout the South. In Texas, Texans show up for each other. And I know that is also true across the footprint of the SEC whenever there are issues, that Southerners come together and make sure that they do the best they can to make sure everybody's okay. So, all right. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We had a great time going over our over-unders. That was part 4 of our SEC over-unders. And we will be moving on into different segments next week. We'll be announcing those soon. We got to do a little brainstorming on what we're going to cover next, but obviously we're going to be covering SEC Media Days and a couple other news items that are going to be coming out over the next couple weeks. To make sure that you don't miss any of that, make sure to sign up, biscuitsSEC.com/newsletter. The Morning Biscuits newsletter comes to you every Wednesday during the off season. And then soon we're going to be kicking back up to Monday and Friday for that. And that's written by myself and by Hammer. So make sure to check that out, biscuitsSEC.com/newsletter. Be sure to also check us out on social media at Biscuits SEC across platforms, including our YouTube channel. Please go subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as they all say, hit the notification bell, do all that, like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And we thank you guys all for watching us tonight. For Hammer, I am Boss Man. We will see you guys right back here next week on Wednesday, and also tomorrow night for SEC After Dark.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, y'all.